Hare Krishna. Very nice to be back with you all again today. You know, from this spot here, when you look up into that room there, the sound room, picture of Srila Prabhupada on the Vyasa-san. So wherever we look, we're seeing Srila Prabhupada. So yesterday, we concluded in Dallas. We were in Dallas, where Prabhupada stayed there for a few days, and we talked about how he basically showed me how he wanted me to cook for him, and he gave me how to massage, proper ways to massage. These were my main services. And as I said, he even showed me how to fold the chadar, his chadar. I actually have that chadar with me. And by those that stay through all this classes every day, the last day I have a pair of Prabhupada's slippers and his chadar that I brought that he wore. For years, he wore that chadar for at least 5-6 years. We'll come to a point somewhere in the classes, Prabhupada gave me that chadar, which is also a very funny story. And the slippers, that was from a Japan Airlines flight. Back in those days, everyone got slippers and eye mask and earplugs and like that. So somehow or other, I managed to keep those Japan Airlines slippers. So we'll start out, we'll still be in Dallas for a little while. I've already said what it was like, a little bit what it was like to be on the morning walk with Srila Prabhupada, because that eagerness was there. Whoever was on the morning walk, they were always hoping there would be some conversation that they could get involved in. Those that were brave enough. Some wouldn't even imagine speaking before Srila Prabhupada. They were way too nervous. Others were looking for the opportunity. Prabhupada might ask a question, or maybe along the way they could ask a question in relationship to something he was saying, because morning walk was very nice. For me, there was the temple. The temple, you always knew what was going to happen. One day, early on, Prabhupada left his sitting room, and as he was walking out to the temple room, he said, "Now I'm going to be Acharya." Because in his room, he was a devotee of Krishna. He was also Acharya, he was Guru. But sometimes if it was just a few of his disciples, especially those that traveled with him, he was just another part of himself. He was a devotee of Krishna. He just loved Krishna. And I said often, he could be very childlike, Srila Prabhupada, very innocent. He seemed very innocent, very childlike, which was different from childish. He wasn't childish, he was childlike. And so for me, these are the things I became very attached to. And to this day, what somehow or other manages to keep me in the association of devotees. Because devotees, all the devotees, they remind me of Srila Prabhupada. Because they're all following Srila Prabhupada's instructions. So there was this morning walk. Now, for me, I'm very, very new, very young, very new. And I'm learning, day by day, I'm learning different things about Srila Prabhupada, how he did things, how he said things, how he walked, how he ate, all these different activities I'm having to learn as the days go by. But I could see, again, I held the Uhr tape recorder. This was a metal tape recorder, probably weighed close to 10 pounds, 5 kgs. Wasn't like this, nothing like this little thing by my neck. And again, I think, as I mentioned to you, becoming Prabhupada's servant, my growing up amongst a mother and 2 older sisters, I learned a certain nature of what to do, what I saw being done. That's what we learn, right? We learn by seeing and by hearing and the activities of who we're with. So that's what I learned. So I had this nature, always observing who's doing what they're doing, who's doing it, different things I see. So with Prabhupada, that was a good thing. If you're ready to serve, then it's good. If you see he wants something, if he would be looking at the glass, you knew right away. He just wants the water. Bring the water to him if he's on the Vyasasana. So on this walk, there was all of us young. There were a few brahmacharis, maybe sannyasi or two. And there was one young brahmachari. And I could see his anxious. He seemed anxious and eager. He wanted to say something to Prabhupada, which most all of us did. Even if we didn't have a question, we would invent a question just so we could talk to him. And the whole walk, Prabhupada was in one of those walks. There were different kinds of morning walks. Some, he walked fast. It was always a power walk because it was meant, like he said, morning walk kept him alive. He said morning walk and massage kept him alive. So both of those things were meant to keep the blood, moving the blood, get the blood flowing. So Prabhupada walked fast, as Maharaj was saying just an hour ago. We had trouble keeping up with him. And this was something that occurred. I know morning walks, especially some places, walk could be longer than other places, like Juhu. I remember walking on the beach with Prabhupada in Juhu. And so the temple was just, Juhu, where we stayed, the temple, Prabhupada's room, was just a block away from the beach. And it was Prabhupada's favorite beach because it was nice and flat. It was very level and solid, so it made walking easy. So when he would turn and start on the beach, we would be there, and especially his entourage. And Prabhupada had like 3 different places he would stop and turn around. So whenever he goes to that place, that means you're halfway back. So if he didn't stop at the first place, we would start looking at each other. Uh-oh, it's going to be a longer walk today. You had to be prepared for this walk. And if he didn't stop at the second place, it was, this is going to be a really long walk. There were morning walks, devotees wouldn't go on it because it was too much for them. And we're talking about people in their 20s. Prabhupada was in his 70s. And whatever it may be, he utilized that morning walk. So this morning walk, Prabhupada's just chanting, hand in his bead bag, and he's chanting and walking. And this one brahmachari, he just wants to talk to Prabhupada. But he was careful. He could see that there's no opportunity. Anyway, the whole walk went on. Prabhupada goes, I don't know where we went in Dallas, but probably a park. Prabhupada generally walked in parks or by the beach. That was the 2 things. He liked nature, simple living. That's what simple living means. He didn't like walking in the city, on the city streets, big high buildings and pollution and people. He liked walking where there are lakes and trees. In many places he would go to, what do they call them, different parks where they have all the plants from all around the world, whatever they could put in there. I'll think of the word eventually. Botanical garden, thank you. Yes, botanical gardens. That was one of his favorite places. And he did that in San Francisco and Mexico City. They would go to the botanical gardens. So anyway, the walk was finishing. So of course we went to this place by car. So in the car was just the driver, Srila Prabhupada, and myself. So we get to the car, and my service, I open the door, and Srila Prabhupada gets into the car, and he in the back seat, and he sits down. Was on the passenger side, the right side of the car. He's sitting down on the seat. And finally, this devotee, this young boy, sees, last chance, this is it. And he says, Prabhupada. And Prabhupada looks. He said, how do I become Krishna conscious? He just wanted to ask Prabhupada something. Think about it. Everything we do, this whole program, how to become Krishna conscious, chanting around, everything we're doing is how to become Krishna conscious. But in his eagerness, his desperation to have that moment with Srila Prabhupada, that's what came out of his mouth. How do I become Krishna conscious? And I'm holding the door open, waiting to close it. And Prabhupada looked at him. He said one word, and then he looked forward, which meant, to me, I knew that meant he's finished. That was it. One word. That's what he gave him. One word. And I closed the door. And I went around the other side, sat down beside Prabhupada, closed the door, and the car drove off. So one word. We talk about the founder Acharya, Srila Prabhupada. He can tell you how to become Krishna conscious. One word. What's the word? He knows. Many Pramanjana knows because he's heard. Because he knows. How do we become Krishna conscious?
Desire.
Yes. Desire. Not chanting. Everyone's chanting something. What's her name? Taylor Swift. She's got billions of people while she's chanting all the time. This song, that song. Everyone's chanting. What are they chanting? People would say, Hare Krishna. I said, no, that's 2 words. Desire. It's all we do. We have no ability to do nothing. What do we say? Not a blade of grass moves without the sanction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So everything we do, every breath we take, every step you make, it's all by Krishna's mercy. So the only thing we can do is desire. And the only way to become Krishna conscious is to make that your one desire. So this whole process that Srila Prabhupada gave us is how to, over time, all these other desires, we have to let them go. And our process is not one of negating things. Our process is one of Krishna, more and more Krishna, more and more taking Krishna. And then these desires, they'll fall away. But we all have desires. We all have so many desires. As we're going through life, brahmacharis, they also have desires. Some of them I see get the latest phone. They have a program in Vrindavan. Every 3 years, they get a phone. They can't wait for those 3 years to come. They want a room with a bath instead of a general bathroom. Grahastas want a nice place to live, nice house. Both maybe want nice job, nice car, so many desires. Prabhupada, I'll tell you, because it works. When we came to India the first time, and by now I had been in India October, November, December, January, still in India, my first time. Maharaj, I think Maharaj said yesterday, or someone said yeah, you said it yesterday. Prabhupada said when Indians go to the West, they live like Indians. And when Westerners go to India, they try to live like Westerners. This is Maharaj's facilities he makes here. It's for the Westerners, so they're comfortable. If you're not comfortable, how can you think about Krishna if you're always disturbed? Years ago, I lived in the West for a long time, and I remember we went to one devotee family's house in the West, and Indian family, so the joint family was there, father, mother, the children, married children with the wives and the husbands, and they're all in the same house. It's Indian style, not Western style. They kick you out of the house. If you're lucky if you get to 18, it's like time to go make some money. Now they don't even want to leave. They try to charge them rent to live in their house. I can't get rid of my child, Even 25, they're still living in the house. Society is so difficult now. I heard the Germans, they had a process. When you were 18, they took your dinner plate and broke it. That was it. Goodbye. But no, Indians, they have a joint family, which is very nice. Very nice. So I'm in this house, and nice big house in a subdivision, which was also very normal. And the ladies, Matajis, they were in the kitchen, and one's rolling chapatis on the counter. But she's not standing on the floor. She's cross-legged on the counter rolling chapatis. Instead of being on the floor in India rolling chapatis, even counters there, so she's sitting on the counter rolling her chapatis. So we have our natures that we have. After being with Prabhupada for months, very austere. For us, India was austere, always getting sick. Keeping clean was difficult. Everything was difficult. Getting water to drink that didn't make you sick was difficult. But one day, Prabhupada was Mumbai, and we were invited to stay in this one very big, this is 1973, very big house, lots of marble, many, many rooms. It literally, there was a Bollywood movie going on in the house that I happened to go in the dining room at one point, and there was a big, big table there, and what's it called? We call it Lazy Susan. In the center, there was a round thing that spun. Anyway, there was a person, young lady on the table, and all these crazy men were spinning the table around. I was like, what? That was Bollywood back in the 70s. But I had a room. We all had a room. Shyamasundar had his room, Prajumna had his room, I had my own room. We each had our own bathrooms. So we were all very happy, like, Prabhupada, stay here as long as you want. This is nice. Prabhupada didn't care. These things didn't interest him. But he knew us, and he certainly knew me. By now, I've been with him for 3 months, so he knew all kinds of things about me that I didn't know about myself. And he rang his bell one afternoon. And I went in and offered obeisances. And he just looked at me, smiled. He said, so, Sruta Kirti, do you like it here? He knew how much I liked it here. I said, yes, Prabhupada, it's very nice. He said, yes, it's a very nice place. He said, if Krishna gives us a bed, we sleep in the bed. If he doesn't give us a bed, we sleep on the floor. That was his thing. So that was always, whenever in my travels, I always try to find a nice bed. Here, everything's wonderful, wonderful. But sometimes it's not like that. We were in a place, we had a bed, we were traveling, it was in Canada. Our room was, the window was a basement room, so it had a window halfway up the wall, which was right at a highway. So if you opened the window, there were buses going by, cars going by, all through the day and night, and you could soot coming in the room. But if this is what Krishna gives you, this is a devotee. And this is what I always learned from Prabhupada. He never complained. He didn't pick a servant. It was Kirtanananda. He arranged, Prabhupada, I have a servant for you. If he didn't do that, Prabhupada would have gone to the next place, try to find the person who cooks best to cook for him. If there was somebody who knew how to massage, he would have him massage. He wouldn't say, all right, I have to have a servant. This is devotee. Even Srila Prabhupada, whatever Krishna provided, he accepted it. So that was my experience in Dallas, as I'm, again, beginning to learn. Then after Dallas, now from Dallas to Los Angeles, now this is September, early September Prabhupada's headed to Vrindavan for Kartik. In August, he wrote a letter saying, I'll be coming to Vrindavan for Kartik, for the month of Kartik. He had not been in Vrindavan for the month of Kartik since he left India back in 1965. So now he's going to stay in Radha Damodar temple in his rooms. He told Jamuna Gurudas, prepare my rooms, I'll be coming. So he was very aware he was going to Vrindavan. And on the plane, as we're going to Los Angeles, he's sitting at the window, always window seat. Prabhupada always had the window seat. And then, of course, there were 3 seats. I'd be sitting in the middle, secretary next to me. Usually planes weren't filled. They would just go wherever, in front, behind Prabhupada, somewhere behind Prabhupada. But I'd be sitting next to him. And he's sitting there, and he said, we're headed to Vrindavan for Kartik. Now, this is 1972. I didn't even know what it meant, Kartik. I figured it was a month. I knew it was a month. But I didn't know anything more than that. But Prabhupada said, we're headed to Vrindavan for Kartik, the month of Kartik. And he said, every day, I'm going to read from the Nectar of Devotion. Bhakti Rasa. No, he didn't say that. He said, every day we'll have class on Nectar of Devotion. He said, you read from the Nectar of Devotion. He said, then I'll stop you and give comments. Yes, Prabhupada. So I knew he was very aware that this going to Vrindavan, this was going to be something special. And we're working our way there over the next few days, next week or so. But I could see Prabhupada was very aware of going to Vrindavan with his disciples. He wanted, even at that time, as many disciples as possible to go there. So then we got to Los Angeles. Los Angeles was the world headquarters, 72 and 73. There's no temples in India. The world headquarters was New Dwarka, Los Angeles. And again, that's where Kurandar was. Big devotee. He became GBC right away. He became one of the 11 or 12 GBC members from the beginning. And it's a very pretty temple. It wasn't their first temple. I think it was the 3rd temple. Watsika Avenue, 3764 Watsika Avenue. I lived there for some years in the early 80s as well. But while I was with Prabhupada, we went through Los Angeles many times, probably a half a dozen times. And he would spend days there, sometimes weeks there, sometimes several weeks there. Because Los Angeles was, all facility was there for his translation work. It was a very nice place to do his translation work. His rooms were very nice. He had a main sitting room, and then there was another sitting room. If you haven't been there, if you ever get into the Los Angeles area, you have to go to New Dwarka and see Rukmini Dwarkadish and see Srila Prabhupada's rooms. In his sitting room, there was an altar, three levels, the deities on the altar. And he had a very nice painting, big painting on one wall that was done by this one Mataji, whose name escapes me right now. She was an older lady. I mean, she was really, when she was probably in her 50s. So she was actually much older than all of us, and she was an artist and had done this nice painting of Radha Krishna.
Jadharani? Jadharani? Is that her name, Jadharani?
Sarvani?
Jadharani.
No. No, Jadharani was young. She was 30. No, this woman was all gray hair. She was wearing white at that time. She was at least in her 50s at that time. I didn't see her very often, but this was Prabhupada's quarters there. It had, like I say, it had a bedroom, nice large bedroom, and in the bedroom was a keyboard It was raised up on legs. Nanda Kumar's parents gave it to Srila Prabhupada. He would play on that sometime, electric keyboard that was in there. And then the other sitting room where there was a skylight. If the weather was nice, Prabhupada took massage in his garden. Like I said, the morning sun. Massage started around 11:30. And he would take the sun on his back because it gave energy, he said. And many of his books, the Bhagavatam set, when Prabhupada traveled, any temple, only books in Prabhupada's room were his books. No other books, no encyclopedias, no magazines, Prabhupada's books. So early on, when I was first with him, it was just a few books. First Canto, Nectar of Devotion, Teachings of Lord Chaitanya, like that would be on the shelf. But in Los Angeles, there was this whole set of books. And they were we called them the Green Bhagavatam. And then there was one other book he traveled with. That was the Black Bhagavatam. Prajumna, he would be taking care of these Bhagavatams. The Black Bhagavatam, which is from India, was the Srimad Bhagavatam, all 12 cantos, all in Sanskrit. That's all it was. So that's what Prabhupada used. He would have on his desk at night. The green Bhagavatams, there was one, they were big, like the original Krishna books. They were quite big, like an A4 piece of paper, 8 by 11 or so piece of paper. And they were all like this thick. And there was one book for each canto. And they had the commentaries, all the great acharyas. When you see in the commentaries, when Prabhupada gives a comment and says, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti says this, Jiva Goswami, he's getting that from the Green Bhagavatam. So imagine what Srila Prabhupada gave us. He had to be reading, he was reading these, and he was reading all the various commentaries on each sloka. And then he would speak. His dictaphone machine, that was a Grundig, German. Both these things were German. The Ur tape recorder, German, they made the best. And this Grundig dictaphone machine, which, well, if you haven't seen what that looks like, I'll make sure you get to see that before the final classes. It had a little microphone, wasn't a roundish one, it was kind of boxy looking, with a little telephone cord, and small reels of tape. And Prabhupada, he would do his dictation with this dictaphone machine. When they first got Prabhupada a dictaphone machine, they were thinking, it was Gargamuni, I believe, who said in New York City, he saw it in one shop, a dictaphone machine, and he thought, I'll get it for Prabhupada. That's when he started, instead of having the type on a typewriter, which he did for years, now he had this dictaphone machine. And they were saying, well, Prabhupada, should I show you? And Prabhupada right away, he was very capable. He had a little thing, you press up and down, it said record. You could go back down and rewind, and you could push it, and it would play what you had just said. You could rewind it. And I would listen to him night after night after night. I would hear, because I was generally very close. So I would hear his voice on the dictaphone machine as he would speak. And then sometimes he'd rewind it, and he would listen to what he said. And sometimes he would rewind it to the same, it would go back like 5 seconds, 10 seconds. He would rewind it again and say something perhaps a little differently. This is how carefully. And he's doing this 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning, when everyone's sleeping. Srila Prabhupada's giving us Srimad Bhagavatam. And they were the two books. These commentaries were very important, that Prabhupada used for the translation work. And to hear his voice, I heard different voices from Srila Prabhupada. He had his early morning voice, very, very deep. Then gradually, as the morning went on, it got a little higher. by class time, then it was like, but early in the morning it could be very deep. And after his nap in the afternoon also, if he said anything to me, it was his very deep voice. One of my godbrothers, I think his name was Chaitanya Rupa, he was funny, he was from Chicago. He said, you know my favorite story? And I said, no, I don't know your favorites. And it was in Juhu. Prabhupada had two favorite places, Hawaii and Juhu. He said were his favorite places. Again, Prabhupada could say that in 100 different places, but he said at that time, he said two favorite places, Hawaii and Juhu. Why? Dab. You all know what dab is? Coconut. Coconut. Prabhupada loved coconut water. Gargamuni brought him a gold straw. Solid gold straw, not gold-plated straw. Solid gold straw. That was one of the items in the white bag, this gold straw. Now in Juhu, very easy to get coconuts. Hawaii, not quite as easy, even though they were everywhere. Devotees would climb the trees. Remember Guru Kripa, who was GBC then. He had the whole brahmachari ashram. It looked like a pyramid of coconuts in the room, like hundreds of coconuts sitting in the room for Prabhupada. So in Juhu, when he stayed in his quarters there's no temple, he's in a flat. It's just a 2-bedroom flat. One was his bedroom, one was his sitting room, and the hallway, that was servant's room, that was my room, just sitting in the hallway. So after lunch, after his nap every day, and sometimes it could be half an hour, sometimes an hour. He's only taking 2-3 hours at night, so sometimes an hour. And he would just walk out of his bedroom, and he'd walk to the bathroom, and I'd just hear, Dab. That was it. He did. Simple. We say simple. Devotee is simple. Even in his speech, he can be simple. He would just come out of his room. He wouldn't look at me anything. I just knew, Dab. And I would give him his dab. So that one devotee said, that's my favorite story. All this whole book, that was his favorite story. Dab, Prabhu would say. So in Los Angeles, for me, was one of my favorite places. You want to ask something right away?
You said for 2 reasons, right? One of it was Dab.
You said Prabhupada liked the Juhu place for 2 reasons. One of it was Dab.
Because Hawaii and Juhu had coconuts. And that made it his favorite place because he liked coconut water every day.
It was 2 places.
Yeah, both places. Hawaii, tropical island. Coconuts everywhere. Anyway, that's another story about Hawaii. But so in Los Angeles, now it's the world headquarters, which means we also had the head pujari in Los Angeles for Sri Sri Rukmini Dwarkadish. The head pujari's name you know very well. Her name was Shilavati. She was the head pujari of the whole society. She was, did she wear white then? I don't know. I think she wore white then. She was always, to me, she reminded me, I was raised in Catholic school, she reminded me of a nun. You know, she was like a sister, you know, a nun. And she had black rimmed glasses. She just died last year. Her final year, she was in New Vrindavan. The devotees there, particularly Malati, saw to her care. She was in her 90s. And she, after being, I don't know where she made it to New Vrindavan, and that's where she left, in New Vrindavan.
She was serving there also. She served there for many years.
Yes. She was also the pujari for the Radha Damodar deities in the roadshow. She was their pujari at that time as well. And then she wound up in Los Angeles where I would see her. So Prabhupada trained her how to be pujari. And devotees would come from all around America to learn. how to be Pujari from Shilavati, because Shilavati was trained by Srila Prabhupada. Do like this, do like this, do like this. Prabhupada, where he stayed, his rooms, there's this little alleyway. Everything's concrete there. Concrete driveway was actually really bad shape. And the other side of the driveway, outside Prabhupada's sitting room, there was a karate dojo, I guess you call it dojo. It was a karate dojo there. All day long you would hear, hut, hut, I guess as they're going, hut, hut, you'd hear the karate guy. And Prabhupada, knowing nothing could be done about it, couldn't tell the guy not to go hut. That's what he did. That was his business. So on all the little kids, big kids, whatever, everyone's going hut, hut. So different classes through the day would go on. Prabhupada didn't say anything. Now, if it was here and that fan was going, you would hear about it because we could do something about it. That's tolerance. When you hear devotees tolerant, he understands what he can do, what he can't do. If you can't do anything, you just tolerate it. And Prabhupada tolerated. And he would look out that window sometimes to see what was going on outside. One time, he looked outside the window and he saw a young boy, two young, maybe teenagers, young teenagers, talking. He just saw them talking. He rang the bell, called me into his room. I offered obeisances. He said, "You see them?" He said, "Just talking." He said, one saying, "Hey, let's go out, let's do this, let's do that." He said, "We were all so young." He said, "We also had the same desires, the same feelings." He said, "But when I was growing up," he said, "you couldn't even talk to a girl, much less ask her out on, it didn't exist." Imagine Prabhupada coming to America and seeing the culture. That's what he said. How am I going to teach these people to become Krishna conscious? He said, when this is going on, he said, just chatting, "Hey, let's go here, let's go here." He said, we had the same. He said, but never would even speak to a young girl if you were a young boy. He said, my mother had a very close friend across the street from where we lived. He said, just across the street. He said, but for my mother to visit her, they would have to send the carriage. She would go sit in the carriage and they would take her across the street. She didn't even wander out onto the street, he said. He said the culture was so strict then. He said everything was so strict. I was brahmachari, so he's telling me too. He's telling me for my own knowledge, my information, how to be. Prabhupada wanted his brahmachari. In Mayapur, this was 1975, big festival, 500 devotees in Mayapur. 500 devotees in the festival 1975 from all over the world. And Prabhupada, he would go on his veranda and he would look at the birthplace of Lord Chaitanya and he would look out and see the Gaudiya Math temple there and just look out into the rice fields. Very nice breezes, Mayapur at different times of the year. Very, very wonderful. And Prabhupada was on the veranda and he saw a devotee, boy and girl, man and woman, young devotees, 20, whatever. He saw them talking. He just saw them talking together. He looked at me. He said, what is this fish? He called it fish. I don't know if that was a Bengali phrase or something, but he just, I don't know if you ever seen the fish, they're like that. So that's what he said, fish. He said, what is this fish? He said, tell them, stop. He said, we have to be exemplary. He said, especially in the holy places, especially Mayapur, Vrindavan. He said, this couldn't. Prabhupada, if he was in Vrindavan now, I don't know what he would do. I don't know how he would tolerate what it's like if he saw life in ISKCON society around the world and social media, the things that go on. There in Los Angeles, he had this one clock. It was a table clock, but it had a dome over it, glass dome. It was very pretty. It's still there. Doesn't work now. But then it worked, and this little thing would spin around. That was in his bedroom. And I remember one day Kurunda came in, and it was by this clock spinning. And Kurunda said, Srila Prabhupada, he said, they have this telex. He said, and it's really wonderful. It's like the latest thing. He said, and if we had a telex machine, he said, in each temple, he said, you can instantly communicate from Los Angeles to Paris, anywhere, to India, wherever this telex machine was there. He said, we could communicate, he said, very quickly. He said, and Prabhupada looked at him. He said, it'll just be used for gossip. Imagine. Gossip. This is what we see. We have I have many stories about gossip, Srila Prabhupada. It'll come up in the coming days. Only thing we talk about is Krishna, Krishna's service, the philosophy. Anything else is gossip. So this was Los Angeles. I learned so much in Los Angeles. We stayed there a long time. So Shilavati and I, we had a very nice relationship. And like everyone, she was always asking me, what did Prabhupada do? What did Prabhupada say? How does Prabhupada, how does he do this? How does he do this? And I would tell her things. So one day she asked me about Prabhupada's lunch. I gave you a very, I think, good description yesterday how I gave Prabhupada his lunch. Gave him one chapati, then back and forth, 2 chapati, 3 chapati, 4 chapati, every time back and forth, back and forth. So I explained it to her. So a few days go by, and she says, Sruta Kirti, she said, guess what I've done? And I said, what have you done? She says, well, on the altar, of course, Rukmini Dwarkadish there, the far altar, Jagannath deities, Gaur-Nitai to the right of Rukmini Dwarkadish, Jagannath to the left, all on separate altars. She said, so I bring in the plates, Raj Bhog, bring in the Raj Bhog. She said, and I'm just putting 1 puri on the plate. Then I go back into the kitchen, I make 3 more puris, then I bring them in, put the puris on the plate. And I go back, she said, just like you're doing for Srila Prabhupada. I thought, uh-oh. It didn't sound, not what Prabhupada said to do. So, of course, me being who I was, I couldn't wait. So it was the afternoon. I said, Prabhupada, so Shilavati told me she's bringing the deities, the puris, one at a time. Prabhupada shook his head. He said, just see. He said, you can't do that. He said, you bring in their plates, you put them down, and you have to give them 15, 20 minutes to take the offering. He says, you don't go in and out. He said, once they're eating, he said, you don't go in anymore. He said, Westerners always changing. He said, just do what I said. He said, don't change. He said, he told her, then it was Westerners. Now it's everyone. You can't just say Westerners, you all you Indians. Everyone's changing everything that Srila Prabhupada gave us. I could speak here for days, all the nonsense that goes on in this society, somehow or other in the name of time, place, and circumstance that's been changed. Prabhupada said, don't change. He wrote one letter. It was also head Pujari after Shilavati. Dhruvananda was his name. He wrote all these questions to Srila Prabhupada. Is it okay? Can the deities wear black? Okay to do this with Tulsi Devi? And there were some other things I forget on there. I should check and see. And Prabhupada said, don't change anything I gave you. He said, I gave you the process how to worship the deity. He gave us the process for everything. And he said, the greatest danger in our society is if the deity worship is changed. He said, the very greatest danger to his society is if the deity worship is changed. So he said, tell her no. So I told her. Prabhupada said, I had a very nice way, I coming down on people. I didn't, but I said, no. Prabhupada said, don't do that. He showed you what to do. Just do what he said. He said, you Western, change disease, Prabhupada called it. He said, in the West, if someone has a pair of pants and they may be too long, a few inches too long, he said, you'll cut it off and throw it away. He said, in India, we'll just roll them up. We'll just roll up the sleeve. You don't waste anything. Anyway, it's there. Who knows when you might need it for something. Might come in handy. Maybe you'll grow. You don't know. No, he said, don't change anything. Yes, Prabhupada. I was very careful. As Prabhupada showed me things, I wasn't inventive. I said yesterday, I was not very creative, which was very good quality to be devotee, very good quality to be servant. Just do what you're told. I often said, I would walk, you couldn't hear my footsteps if I was walking around Prabhupada's room. Couldn't hear me because I didn't want to be heard. It wasn't my business to be known. My business is just do your service. And we would get Rajbhog, Prasadam, because there could be sometimes 3, 4 of us in Prabhupada's entourage. So his cooker, what he had on his plate, that I distributed. There was always something on his plate that he left. He didn't eat so much. He did like chapatis. He could eat 5, 6 chapatis. Finish a katuri full of dal, rice, eat his dal, different vegetables. One of the things I would make very often was bitter melon, Corella. And Prabhupada showed me just ghee with a little turmeric in it and just fry it till it became crispy. And that was start the meal. He started the meal with the Corella because it aids digestion, increases the appetite, it aids digestion. Everything's scientific, Ayurvedic, scientific. So we would get this Rajbhog, and one day they're on it. Now we had sweets. Prabhupada, one of the things Kirtananda showed me how to make was sandesh. Sandesh was very important. Prabhupada had sandesh every day. Sometimes he would even ring the bell, 2 o'clock in the morning. You have any sandesh? Yes, Prabhupada, bring me sandesh. It's a tonic. Sandesh. Not even a sweet, it's a tonic. And the way we made it, it was dry. Dry. It's also difficult to get proper sandesh in many places. It was dry, not too sweet, like 1/4 sugar, and you press it. No, not one single lump should be in it. Not one little, you don't even know it's paneer anymore. That's how fine it should be. You don't even know it's paneer. So you press it by hand, we press and press, and put the sugar, then put it in the wok on a low flame and just keep doing till it is separated from the surface of the wok. And he said, if you make it properly, it will keep for 1 week, he said, even no refrigeration. So we could travel with it, because he liked, that was the perfect. And you couldn't travel with rasgullas and things. Burfi you could, but sandesh was very good and very healthy. Prabhupada had milk product at every meal. I told you, breakfast, there would be milk or yogurt and a milk sweet. Lunchtime, always milk sweets were there. Burfi, sandesh, rasgulla, whatever it might be. And at nighttime, every night, hot milk. Every night. Not just hot milk, boiling hot milk with a little sugar. Little sugar. One time, there in Los Angeles, he would walk around. There was a hallway. From his sitting room, you'd go to a hallway. There would be his bathroom on the left, and the next door was the servants' quarters. Never closed. I had no right to close the door on the servants' quarters. I knew that. Didn't have to tell me. It was always open. Because if he walks by, he wants something, he's got to see you there. You have to be there. Nowhere else. Servant had to be there. And he would say, do this, do that, make me this, make me that. So one night he said, tonight, the hot milk, he said, put honey. Never said that. But he said it to me the one night, put honey in it. And immediately I said, well, Prabhupada, and then honey, if you heat it, it becomes poison. He said, just put the honey in it. That was once just wash the rice. Well, now he's saying, just put the honey in it. This is how he dealt with me. Everything. I sometimes say I'm fanatically not fanatic. And if I am, Prabhupada helped. He knew I was like that already, and he seemed to encourage it by even dismantling the little fanatic things I did have, that I thought I should do, that I learned what to do. That's all because I wouldn't remember it otherwise. We were in Germany. Germany, they had that big castle. They bought one in France, one in Spain, one in Germany, the Schloss, the castle. So Prabhupada went there. And if you know, natures, we all have different natures, different cultures. And the Germans, they had their way. And even when Prabhupada arrived, on the main street, they had put a big banner across the main street for Prabhupada's arrival. And it said, the Führer has arrived. Which probably was not very much appreciated by some people, but it said the Führer. I guess Führer, I don't even know what it means, but it must mean like the supreme something or other, And all of the devotees there in Germany, because they saw how Prabhupada chanted, they saw how he dressed. So when it was cold there, they all had Prabhupada hats on. And they would all chant their japa. Like they saw Prabhupada chant japa. Prabhupada often would have one hand behind his back if he was walking and chanted. He had a hand behind his back like this and his hand in his bead bag. And even how Prabhupada sounded, they would chant. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Just like that, just like Prabhupada. So they're on a morning walk. And they're all there. It's German devotees, young German boys there. And they're on the morning walk by the Schloss. It's out in the country, farmland. And Prabhupada's walking through the fields. And he's ready to go in this one direction. And one of the Brahmas, no, Prabhupada. He said, don't go down there. And Prabhupada looks at him. He said, why? He said, well, that field is all wheat. And today's Ekadasi. And you may breathe in. And Prabhupada looked at him and he had his cane, he pointed. He said, don't be a fanatic. Yeah, don't be a fanatic. We're not fanatics. Devotees. We have common sense. And then Prabhupada deliberately walked right through that field of wheat. And he probably even breathed heavier just to show him. Don't be nonsense. Don't be a nonsense.
About the sugar.
Hmm?
The sugar. And devotees stop eating sugar.
Yeah, that was Laguna Beach. That'll come into Los Angeles, the Los Angeles process here. So we're getting Raj Bhog as well as some of Prabhupada's remnants. And there was a sweet that was on the Raj Bhog plate. Wasn't burfi, wasn't sandesh, wasn't rasgulla, wasn't ras malai. It was this thing with a bunch of dried fruit and had some nuts in it, and it had Quaker Oats puffed rice. You know, you have your puffed rice here, and if you ever, maybe you've seen it, but if you ever go to the US, we had puffed rice cereal, Quaker Oats puffed rice, but it was a very different looking puffed rice. It was kind of fatter and fluffier. It was, anyway, that's what the sweet was made with. Because in America, you give us something, we'll show you how to do it cheaper, faster, and with less quality. We can do that. They say, you know, business has that thing, there's three things. You have quality, price, and speed. And you can never have more than two. You know, you can have quality and price, you can have speed and price, or you could have, what was the third one? Quality, speed.
Speed and quality?
Yeah. But you can't have all three. You can't get something of high quality, fast, cheap. It's going to be pricey. So that was that. So this thing, which Prabhupada saw us Westerners, we're always changing. And we came up with the Simply Wonderful. But Prabhupada liked the Simply Wonderfuls. That's an exception to the rule. It was just powdered milk, unsalted butter, and sugar, powdered sugar. That's all it was. Those three things. And you could whip up 100 of them, go out on Harinam and distribute Simply Wonderfuls. Prabhupada said they were simply wonderful. They were very nice. So that invention was okay. But anyway, I saw this sweet on the Raj Bhog plate. So of course, me being who I was and liking, I do it to this day. I won't say things, I just drop things in. You know, I'll do it. I do it in Vrindavan. So Prabhupada's lunch plate, I put 2 sandesh and 2 of these bogus sweets. I thought they were bogus sweets. I put them on his plate, his lunch plate. So then, of course, we go through our ritual we did every day. I put his plate down, offer obeisances, run back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, chapati, chapati, chapati. Then we get to the end, last chapati, and then finally I come in to get Prabhupada's plate, and he looks at me. He said, "What is this sweet?" He said, "Did you make..." That was always my favorite when he said, "Did you do..." "No, Prabhupada, I didn't do that." He said, "Who has made this?" I said, "Well, they're offering it to the deities." He said, "Why are they concocting?" He said, "I've shown you everything." He says, "I've given you these wonderful Bengali sweets to offer to the deities." He said, "Why are they concocting these things?" I said, "I don't know." "Tell them, just do what I said. Don't change anything." This was a mantra I heard many, many times. Don't change what I've given you. I can tell all of you here, you want to become Krishna conscious, learn what Prabhupada gave you. Don't do anything else. No need to invent anything. He said, don't invent. He said, I've given you everything. And then he would come. Disease, this is the Western disease, change disease. Always think you can make things better. And that is the one thing in Vedic culture, Indian culture, you'll see. Great-grandfather was a carpenter, grandfather was a carpenter, father's a carpenter, son's a carpenter, and his children will be carpenters. And they won't think, no, I have to change. You just do what you've been given. The assignment you've been given at birth, that's what you do. For us, the one thing, even when we came to Krishna consciousness, When somebody would say, Prabhupada, I think I'd go to school. No! He'd say, whatever you know, you use it in Krishna's service. No need to do anything else. Whatever you have, utilize that as a devotee. And I heard these things so many times. But it's difficult now. And the bigger we get, the more difficult it becomes. Because you don't even know what's going on. I know there's countries, their whole idea of Krishna consciousness is psychology. Everything's psychological. Prabhupada didn't, we don't care about psychology. We don't care about any of these things. Just become devotee of Krishna, do a little service. Huh? No ambition. That's what I said yesterday. We have no ambition. So the one you're telling, one day, he goes to Laguna Beach. It was not even 2-hour drive, like an hour drive, maybe a little more than an hour drive in those days. And there was the Laguna Beach Temple. The Laguna Beach Temple was the headquarters for health-conscious devotees. They were the ones that had all the sprouts. Their idea of eating was alfalfa sprouts, mung bean sprouts, you name it, they'll sprout it. You know, wheat berry sprouts. No sugar. Poison. Poison. You'll see it over and over again. Just put white sugar. Google white sugar, you'll see. Worse than heroin. Some people will tell you white sugar. Worst thing, addictive, ruins everything. Horrible stuff. White sugar. and white flour also. Terrible. No nutritional value. So no white sugar, no white flour in the temple. And they have deities. Anyway, Prabhupada went there one day. He gave a lecture. And then temple presidents there. This is a small temple, just a few managers. They're all there in Prabhupada's room in the evening. And Prabhupada asked me, hot milk. No, I knew. He's always saying hot milk. I knew hot milk in the evening. And like I said, that was the one thing. Make sure it foams. When you brought him the hot milk, it would be on the plate because you couldn't hold the cup. One time, devotee brought Prabhupada his hot milk. He said, Prabhupada said, no, it's not hot. Yes, Prabhupada, it's hot. You know, he said, it's not hot. You're holding the cup. Meant it's not hot. If you can hold the cup, it's obviously not hot, right? So Prabhupada, see everything right away. So he asked me for hot milk. And he says, with sugar. He never said. I told you the one time when he told me about honey was to correct me on my poison honey theory. So now he says, hot milk with sugar. So I go into the kitchen, heat up the milk, and I said, where's the sugar? Well, we don't have sugar. It's poison. Okay, here we go. I already knew it, and I already knew why Prabhupada asked for sugar. Because he knew they didn't have sugar. How did he know? Because Lord Chaitanya would tell him when he greets the deities in the morning, when he goes, Krishna would tell him things. And then he would know what these nonsense rascals are doing. Because Krishna would tell him. So of course I come back and say, Prabhupada, they only have honey, raw honey, no sugar. He said, what do you mean no sugar? He says, what does Krishna say? Chini puri, rasavari. Chini puri, Krishna likes sugar, he said. They may not want to eat sugar, but Krishna likes sugar. Yes, Prabhupada. So he told all of them right there, sugar, you have to give the deity ghee. You have to give the deity sugar, not soybean oil. Because you don't have A2 milk or something. No, Krishna has to have sugar. He has to have milk. He has to have ghee. He told me 2 kinds of prasadam. Opulent and sumptuous. Prabhupada loved his use of English, so just expert. He said opulent means ghee and sugar. And the deities have to get ghee and sugar, not extra virgin olive oil. No, not coconut oil because that's better. No, ghee. I said I went into the temple 1971. You smell, I told you, you smelled incense and you smelled ghee on the stove cooking. I also learned in Philadelphia how to make ghee in the oven, you know, on a very, very low flame, or very low heat. You can let it just sit in the oven overnight and you'll have ghee in the morning. I don't know the temperature, so be careful. We didn't have any money in those days, but we had ghee, and the entire feast was cooked in ghee. Now we have millions of dollars, crores of rupees, but no ghee. We have oil, refined oil, the worst stuff, and everyone wonders why they're coming here for treatment, because you're all sick from eating this refined oil, refined this, refined that, store-bought this, store-bought that. Prabhupada said everything we prepare ourselves. Talking of Varna Ashram, Prabhupada said, whatever you grow is 100 times better than if you buy it in the store. He said 100 times better. So all these things, like I say, these are all, of course, Ayurvedic. They're just common sense things, but of course, common sense is not there. Yes, Mara, we can stop here anyway. We're getting to that point.
I was thinking there's another part to the sugar Leela where two boys came in, they were like completely against sugar, and Prabhupada ordered a bowl of sugar and with porgies.
Yes, that's New Zealand. We'll tell that. I was trying to go chronologically, but some things just stick together. So now it's after leaving India, and Prabhupada traveled. He brought with him Srila Ananda Goswami, he was the devotee from Hawaii. He had his whole group. He had 100 followers, disciples practically. They were like disciples he had. Tushta Krishna was one of them. Sudama Vipra Swami was one of them. He was the one that got the hot milk that day. I couldn't do it. Sudama Vipra Swami. So they were all sold out to Siddha. So Prabhupada had all of them travel with him because he understood they're going to go on their own way. You know, you think years ago you heard about Krishna West, thought it was a new thing. No. Siddha Swarup had Krishna West back in 1974. He already had Krishna West going. Completely different idea. Didn't like book distribution, change-ups, you know, begging people for money, all these things. So he was always, but Prabhupada thought, let's let him hear what to say properly. And he had him travel with him for months. So then after India, Prabhupada went to Australia, but before he went to Australia, he went to New Zealand, Auckland, New Zealand. They had a house that was rented, and for some unknown reason, Siddha and Tushta, they cleared the whole house out of the devotees so Prabhupada could stay there. And Prabhupada had a nice room, I had a room, they had a nice kitchen, ghee was in there. Sugar was in there in the kitchen. And Prabhupada was giving him association. What he didn't do generally ever, even when he was taking prasadam, he had them in the room. And he would talk casually with them, you know, this way, that way, which was very unusual. Prabhupada took prasadam alone. He had a method. If people were in the room, when I came in with the plate and put it down, Prabhupada would walk right to the prasadam. When prasadam's there, you honor it. Don't make it wait. It's Krishna. He would go sit down. Come here. He'd call them over and he'd take whatever. If it was fruit, he'd take a piece of fruit, give it to him. He'd say, now you can go. and he'd eat alone. So we would send him away and he would honor prasadam. Definitely, Prabhupada, watching him eat prasadam, you can become Krishna conscious. Just watching him, how he ate Krishna prasadam. And so now I make puris and sabji. It's 9 o'clock at night. Prabhupada's having puris and sabji. And he's sitting there, and they're both in the room, Siddha and Tushta Krishna. And they're both also, we would say, health food fanatics. No sugar, no white flour, all those things. Poison, ghastly. And Prabhupada has his puris and sabji, and he looks at me. We had just arrived there that afternoon. And he said, you don't have any sandesh? And I said, oh, no, Prabhupada. I said, I didn't have any time. No, that's all right. He wasn't after me. He was after them. Yeah, he wasn't going to chastise me. He said, no, that's okay. He said, just bring me another puri and a bowl of sugar. So I go back. I roll out a puri, puff up in the ghee, and find the white sugar, put it in a katuri, and I come back in with the plate with the puri and the sugar. And they're just sitting there watching, and Prabhupada breaks off a piece of the puri, crushes into the sugar, and just starts eating the puri with the sugar, white sugar. And, they don't, of course, say anything to Prabhupada, but you can see their faces. It's not just the sweet, it's literally just sugar, white sugar. But Prabhupada had to end his meal with something sweet. He puts the puri, and you could hear it, crushing into the puri, crushing into the sugar. But he did this very often, where he would, and not about sugar, but about whatever it is you think is important, he's going to show you. Not important. These things are not important. What's important? You become Krishna conscious. It's the only thing that's important, is to become Krishna conscious. And he showed us very specifically how to worship the deity, how to do arti, how to dress them, how to feed them. Or the other prasadam, sumptuous. Prabhupada said sumptuous. We had opulent and then sumptuous. He said sumptuous means very tasty. And then he said the prasadam in the temple should be so tasty that no one even thinks of going outside to get something to eat. He said that's how tasty prasadam should be. So now you all know what it's like eating in the temples. So this was Prabhupada's philosophy. Also, he wrote that letter. All temple presidents, he wrote a letter. How you should always have a stock of prasadam, puris, sabji, halava. I think they were the three things. Could have been pakoras too or something, but it was essentially puri, sabji, halava. He said it should always be enough for 25 guests. Anyone comes to the temple, they should get prasadam. And he didn't just mean a piece of fruit. He meant they should get a nice plate of prasadam. He said, kitchen, Radharani's kitchen. He said, and Krishna's not a poor man. He said, so it should always be in stock to serve. And then every time it's depleted, you make enough for 25 more people. And at the end of the day, he said, if there's anything left, he said, you can sell it or distribute to the devotees. So prasadam was like everything, most important, not for everyone, for the devotees living in the temple, most important, they have nice prasadam. And that prasadam meant ghee, didn't mean oils. Everywhere I go, sick, everyone's sick. So much money, but no money for ghee. We had no money, but we had ghee. New Vrindavan, no one was cheaper, more frugal than Kirtanananda Swami, but we had ghee. We had ghee. So yes, again, Prabhupada, if I was to bring, we'll talk about that tomorrow. We're already finished today. We'll talk about Prabhupada and more about prasadam as different things go on. I haven't even started in Los Angeles. So many things to say. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Now everyone go take your sumptuous prasadam. Hare Krishna. Maharaj and I, we like sumptuous pasta and pizza.
Let's go.
We're going to do that.